Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my colleague, good friend, and co-host Jim Gurley. And had another good pregame session, and came up with a topic that's really nicely fits into our wheel of life, our five areas of life, and the center being the self. I want to talk about self-identity today, and to give that some context, because that's kind of a big topic. It came from Jim looking around and coming across the biblical phrase of I am who I am when God said to Moses. So we're going to dig into that a little bit from a couple of different angles. But Jim, I don't know if you want to start out with a story about this or talk about where the idea came from, or just you take it take it wherever you
I'll
want to
start
go.
off by saying, what I was saying, searching around, biblical would not be in my wheelhouse normally. So I certainly don't want to say this is going to be a spiritual discussion about the Bible. I'll leave that up to you. But
Yeah, I'm not qualified for that conversation either, much as I
no,
feel a little embarrassed about that. But
no. But I did come across uh, a talk and his message was related to self identity and who I am, and he went deep into it. But I think what his message was that we're never ready for something. It, in his case, it was God puts us in these positions to do things that we're never 100% ready for. So the overall message was, don't wait, face your fears. Um, but then also it was relevant to our wheel because as you know, we have these five areas of our life and our framework, and the center of that is self. And often we start off with self-awareness. There's many selves, but I thought the word self-identity could be the top two or three because it's something that we're all humans are constantly
yeah, yeah, I think it's again, I was telling you a little bit, reminding you of my line of work. I have this conversation with everybody I talk to because if you don't know who you are, or you can't articulate who you are, or who you are is not satisfying to you, or any of those conditions exist, then you're not going to be successful looking for that next thing, whether it's a business or a new job or a promotion or a relationship. It's all the same. So I think, and in that same experience, what I discovered, Jim, over the years is I would say the vast majority of people, like 90%, tell me your story, tell me who you are. They can't.
Yeah.
Not with any clarity, not in any concise fashion. So I think it's a very valuable exercise. And in that context, I think a lot of us wait around for something to happen before we change our behavior. In the workplace, I don't know why anybody would be surprised about getting laid off today. I don't know why anybody is feigning surprise about that.
But yeah, to add to what you're saying, Mark, probably the first thing that happens when you get laid off is you do some self-identity searching because you are having to recreate your self-identity for the job market. But like you said, use the word success. I appreciate the number. I think 90%, and that includes myself, and even probably I don't want to speak for you. We struggle that too. Like last week's
Absolutely.
episode was about branding. Yeah, kind of related, right? Very related to self-identity. But why don't you kick it off by reading the definition? I know it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but I always enjoy hearing the definition, so I put that on the screen.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then
happy to do that.
and then we'll
I
break
won't
it
read
down.
the entirety of it, but I'll read enough of it to
Okay.
it'll add
Yeah.
some clarity to the conversation
Okay.
for the
Yep.
listeners. Self-identity refers to how you perceive and define yourself as an individual. It's a collection of beliefs about your own qualities, characteristics, abilities, values, and roles in the world. It answers the fundamental question, who am I? Self-identity is shaped by various factors. So yeah, I mean, I think that when you were talking, I thought to myself, well, you get laid off. Let's just take that use case, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, right? But it's any surprise. It's a health surprise. It's a financial surprise. It's a divorce. Anything that's going to shift dramatically the status of your life. Those are all significant events. That any of them could happen, but we're all surprised by them, and I think it's because we're not prepared for them, because we're not doing this self-identity exercise with any rigor or any transparency with ourselves. And when I encounter someone like that, which I've encountered thousands of people like that from all walks of life, I find that the biggest challenge is that no matter who you are, the other emotions that come with that are embarrassment, shame, self-doubt, anger, anxiety. That is no frame of mind to be doing any rigorous self-work. So, which I think is the argument you like to make about the value of an agent, right? This exercise with an agent could be spectacular. Without one, you might just remain lost. I don't know.
Yeah, but a bad one could also not serve you very well as either. But let's break down some of these words. So, a collection about your own qualities, characteristics, abilities, and I think it's a collection of belief system about yourself. And when you lose your job, your belief system, I would imagine, is been decreased because it's been lowered.
At least
it reminds
shifted.
You of a story.
Yeah,
at least definitely shifted. Yeah, for at least temporarily, right? Your abilities, your value, and your roles in the world. Your role in the world. I'll share this story. This is at the time he was in high school. He was playing on my high school rugby team. He was actually I think he was a freshman. He started, and his brother was really good. His brother was playing. He was a senior, and we were at I was the president of the club, so we were playing an away game, and he ran off the field and tackled a player because he saw his brother get into a fight. Big deal. And he almost got kicked out of the league, and he kind of lost it. So I locked him in the car, and it was a very dramatic experience, right? And the long and short of it is he almost gets kicked out. I go to the league and make a plea. Hey, it wasn't that bad. Fortunately, I knew the referee, and we got him off. The fast forward later, I get a call 2 or 3 years later, and he's from the national, what they call the junior national rugby team head coach, and he said, "Hey, I really like this kid. That we want to take him on our tour to I think it was Canada, so he had to go out of the country." And I said, "Well, let me talk to his. But he's Tongan, so the mother, I think she spoke okay English, but I had to go there because there was no cell phone or whatever. So I explained to the mother that, hey, your son has been selected to play on this national team. This is a big deal. I really think he should go. All the expenses are paid." I said, "Does he have a passport?" And the answer was no. He didn't have a passport. I said, does he have a birth certificate? So it was a miracle. Within I think a 48-hour period, we were able to get I got his birth certificate. Then from there we went to we had to go to the county to get his birth certificate. Then we went to the U.S. Embassy or not the embassy, whatever it is in San Francisco. We got his passport issued like in 5 days. And got him on the plane, and he continued to play rugby for the junior national team. And then fast forward, now he's 27 years old. He played on the Olympic team. He traveled all over the world, so he's a professional athlete. And I saw him last year. Of course, I saw him on TV many times, but it's a huge accomplishment, right? To become an Olympian and to play that many years, but it also, he gave up his entire part of his childhood to some degree because he was on the traveling team then, and he gave up his adulthood up until 27 years old, and now he's retired and he's looking to go to this next phase in his life, and he has no experience, zero experience. He has no job skills, and he was a little bit down, you could tell, because he's applying for a job, and he has his experience is rugby.
Yeah, it sounds like he doesn't have any self-identity either.
He doesn't. Yeah. I appreciate you adding to this, Mark. There's a lot of layers to this. Really nice young man, and and I think you'll do fine. And that was part of the conversation. Hey, don't forget you're a professional athlete. Those skills are transferable. The
Mm-hmm.
discipline, what it took to be an Olympian is a big deal. Now, not everybody will see how that could be transferred. So be selective of where do you apply for jobs, and but really, what do you want to do? What is your self identity? And it reminded me of a couple of things. One, what a huge accomplishment, but also what a huge sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
athletes go through, especially Olympians. And I know you've had some similar experiences with your daughter's friends and that played high level sports. But it did remind me that he is starting all over. The first thing I asked him was, your housing situation. So he's got that pretty stable because he has his mother and they have a family in Hayward. So he's okay. He has housing, but he doesn't have a driver's license because he's never needed one, right?
Yep.
Why do you need a
Yep.
driver's license? You're on an airplane most of the time, or you're in the Olympic. In San Diego, there's an Olympic facility. That's basically where he lived the last 5-6 years, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot to it, especially at 27 years old to start all over.
Well,
And
I think yeah, there are a lot of layers to that. I think that's a good use case for a good discussion. I think, I put my career advisor hat on with a kid like that, and it would be all about self-identity. It would be all about qualities, all characteristics, abilities, values. I've already got a plan in my head as to how I could help this kid,
mhm.
um, but it's that. I mean,
Mark, remember he also doesn't have a network.
yeah,
He didn't build a network either.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's a tough go, but it's also the other way of looking at that is you're operating with a clean slate, right? You also don't have a
yeah,
lot of bad habits. You don't have any presuppositions about what to
yeah.
expect. You're probably
Hmm.
willing to work very hard because you can't become an athlete like that level without working really hard. So you got a lot of
That's what it is.
tools. I would build
Yeah,
up his self-esteem at the beginning of
yeah,
that conversation, and that's part of the self-identity process, right? It's like,
yeah,
well, you're going to have to do some things in the face of fear because most
yeah,
everything I could put you in front of is going to be new to you, right?
yeah.
Unless you go after a
Okay.
coaching job or something like that, which might be a
Mhm.
viable option. I don't know. I don't know as much about the rugby world as you do for sure, but that's
But
a
there's not coaching. There's not much money in coaching. That's often what they'll default to. But maybe if you're a professional coach in the NFL, the NBA, or Major League Baseball, but not in the sport of rugby, unfortunately. So,
but he's a good
but
example, Jim, of, it doesn't sound like there was any planning done up to his last day. And that's hindsight, obviously, so you don't want to beat him over the head with that. But I think with a solid uh, self identity exercise, with some rigorous self reflection, and he definitely will need guidance from someone like you or me. That's for sure.
yeah,
And I think that's true of everybody. But this
mhm.
he is a clean slate. He's a blank piece of paper.
Yeah. I'll make sure I mention that to him. So
I think it'd be helpful. I mean,
yeah,
one of the things this self-identity exercise does, and again, I do this with everybody I talk to. It's the first part of the, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Well, who are you first? Before we go, who do you want to be? Who are you? You know,
hmm
and it's a very interesting exercise, but if it's done correctly and in depth, you can actually see, and you've seen this before, as you help young people all the time, you can actually see the transformation taking place in the eyes and the face and the body language. It's a pretty wonderful exercise, but it's hard to do on your own, particularly when you're not feeling terribly confident.
yeah. Well, and this goes also back to resources, right? If and networking. If you don't have the resources, say a car. I mean, that sounds pretty simple, but if he doesn't have a driver's license, he doesn't have a car. That's going to limit his mobility in terms of what kind of job he can get.
Hmm.
Sure, there's public transportation, but when I mean starting over, he's starting over
Yeah.
from he had to. If he's 27 now, that's 10 years back to go now 1 year forward.
Well,
And
there's a couple things. You said something earlier about you're never ready. I'd like to get into that a little bit because I was
let's do it.
just this morning, or noonish, I was getting ready and then performed on a webinar, and it was a pretty large group of project managers in a monthly association type meeting, and this was my first experience with them, so there was a lot of unknown. And I felt like all morning this morning, I thought to myself, I pushed other things aside to do more preparation for this because I was fearful that I wouldn't be prepared enough. And the topic was leadership.
It, Mark? It was an exercise. What did you have to?
I was giving some training, some leadership training to this group.
I got you.
And so there was a part of me that was like, and this is the thing that goes on in one's head when you start messing around with self-identity. It's like, you're an expert at this, Mark. How could you possibly be worried about not being prepared for this? And you're looking at this proposal that you have, this slideshow that you have, and it's good. So stop talking to yourself with that voice. Stop doing that. But it was I didn't get on the call fearless. I got on the call nervous, right? But I hit the button, I didn't like run away, Yeah. And then I think that's true of everything, Jim. I think with the ease of hindsight, I wasn't ready for a lot of stuff. And I suppose you weren't ready for a lot of stuff either. And you mentioned kids and families and marriages. And yeah, I don't know that we're ever ready for any of that. But I think this notion of, do some self-identity work, manage or mitigate that fear and anxiety. And what you'll find when you come out the other end, even if it goes mediocre, is you got a little bit more confidence. You got a little bit more confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also the other way that you look at life. This came up the other day about, I would rather die trying than not trying at all. Right. There comes a point when you realize, if I don't try, then I have to live with regret the rest of my life. But at least if I try, then I can tell myself I tried. And that sounds like a simple statement, but it's true. That's just about when you're going to talk yourself out of not doing something, or the fear of embarrassment, the fear of failure, because the fear of failure is really the force against you. That you will talk yourself out of doing a lot of things because the fear of failure is worse than not doing anything at all. And we avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a long list. One of my exercises in my morning routine is a surrender list, and it's fear. I don't put fear of failure on there. I put fear of success, and it's an interesting choice. I put things like scarcity and comparison and pride and impatience, and I don't know. My list is my list, but it's an exercise that I go through, and I think that it's helpful. It would be very helpful for this kid to do some of that work. I think that I don't think any of the work that we talk about is complex. I think it's all simple. The thing it has in common, though, they all have in common, is these exercises are hard.
Yeah.
They're hard. They take time. Like when I give out my Find Your True Purpose workbook, I tell people this is not 15 minutes. This is 2 hours. Devices off. The wife and kids know it's only an emergency. They can't interrupt you. It's rigorous work, and so a lot of people don't do it. It's too hard for them.
Yeah, and it's not something you can do alone. I really do think, like you said, you need an agent or a coach or somebody to walk you through it. But once it's done, you do get this clarity and you get this self-identity that has certainty. You also have a certain energy about you. I heard a great quote the other day about how the people seek out the truth. We'll just try not to make this a political conversation, but it always comes back to a political conversation. I'll just use our current president, right? People dislike him for a lot of reasons. But one thing that, well, I guess depends who you're asking this to, but when somebody has the truth, even though you may not agree with but you're attracted to somebody that is close to the truth about something. And there's a certain energy about you when you've taken the time to at least understand it. But but I'll find the quote in a second here. But it was very telling about how, by nature, we're always seeking the truth. So if you come in contact with somebody that you believe has the truth in them, you're just drawn to them naturally. They have an energy about them. Yeah.
It's a very charming quality. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very charming quality. Yeah. And say what you will about our president. I think he knows exactly who he is, and that's the way he carries himself. And there's a lot about that it's easy to understand why people don't like, because he doesn't really seem to care what anyone else thinks about him, although he also gets a little sensitive sometimes. So that's an interesting dichotomy. Now, I think this kid is the most important thing for him, in my opinion, and you can share this with him if you want, is to get started. Get a list, just a couple things. I think the networking thing, just get started. I mean, you don't know nobody. You know some people. So just it's, to your phrase, it's reps. Networking is reps, right? Yeah. So get started. And I don't know about the car thing, but I think the more work he does in that area of self-identity, the more confident he'll become, and the less fearful those options will be. So, but I think it's the first thing he should do.
Yeah. Hey, let's face it, there's a lot of change going on right now, too, in the world. There's a lot of instability. I think there's always been, but at the moment, I've noticed a lot of people wound up, or there's a lot of anxiety at the moment. Even you, and I'm not saying you're having anxiety, but I've noticed even just in our conversations, there's some things that are going on out there that we're sensitive to that are bothering us.
I'm happy to share them, because I think I'm actually, ironically, going through a little bit of self-identity right now. But I also think that it's been my nature for a long time, and I suppose it has to do with my worldview and where that came from. So I give my parents some credit for that. But also middle child stuff, and then the job that I've had for so long. It's a self-identity exercise. It's a self-reflection exercise with everybody that I come in contact with. So, but no, to what you speak of, I think my own age, my own sense of my own mortality, how old my father is, 90, almost 97, and might not be around too much long, probably won't be around too much longer. I've got my son living with me, which is another layer of that onion to peel back. And, I'm in a relationship that occupies a lot of my time, and there's a lot of and the general uncertainty in the world it's palatable, right? It's palatable. So you get all those things converge, and I got to get outside and go for a walk.
Yeah. There's no question. If we've talked about this before, if you're connected to the 24-hour news channels, it will affect your anxiety, because you're somewhat addicting, but then also you're reacting to something you have absolutely no control of. And that, I think that's often what it is about, right? If you don't have control of something, then that creates anxiety, it creates unease, and that's one of the reasons I try to avoid watching, especially international news. I'm interested in it just to know what's going on, but there really is not much we can do personally that would affect the outcome of that. And
I think there's no question. If you can learn how to not worry about the things that you have no control over, you're a lot farther along than most of us.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time. I talk about that all the time. I think that's a big deal. There's more noise now than there was. There's no question about that. I think that's easy.
But, I'll wrap up with a quote. I've used it a few times, but it reminds me of this. We are all actors in this world, this theater of life. He or she that plays the best role wins.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I say it, I interpret it slightly different, but it is true. We're all playing this role. We're all actors in this scene of life, and those roles change at different stages of our life.
I think if I wanted to end with something, I think it would be that the fear topic. You got to do stuff when you don't feel ready. You just have to.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we should all continue to reflect on. And then don't get surprised. You know, it's like I read something I responded to it on LinkedIn, and it was somebody talking about a candidate of theirs that had gone on like 6 interviews over 3 months. I'm like, well, that's a fucking problem right there, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, and the last guy that she got on the phone with was an asshole. And he was newly hired, and he said things that I can't recall exactly, but one of them was, I didn't even have to find this job. They recruited me. He was an arrogant asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole text was about, or the whole post was about, how that's terrible behavior and no one should behave that way. And I responded by saying, you know what? You're 100% correct. However, I think we got to start having the other side of this conversation. Like, why would you let someone treat you like that? That's what's the phrase I heard the other day? What we accept, we promote, right? If you accept something, if you accept that behavior without any retaliation at all, you know, that's an individual that needs to go off and go, what's my side of that conversation from a self-identity standpoint? But it's all of the noise out there is I hear toxicity all the time, and I see these kinds of things all the time. So I think the other kind of context to this self-identity thing is you have to take responsibility for some of the outcome that happens in your life. And I think as soon as you, like, I've got 1 or 2 people in my family that are right now not taking responsibility for what's going on. They're doing no self-reflection at all. Everything's somebody else's fault. That's just a miserable life. I think when you feel the need to stop and reflect, to rebuild your self-identity, to edit your self-identity, to modify your self-identity, I think you're beholden to do that. Otherwise, you're going to get surprised, you know, and shame on us for getting surprised is what I would say.
Yeah, that's why the number one in the wheel of life is self-awareness. It's just being self-aware and taking the time to reflect on that.
I think it's a good time to do that, Jim. I think the things that we talk about, you know, what can you do when you become a little anxious or you get a little scared? You can do something active. You can take action. You can execute on something from mow the lawn, for God's sakes. Walk around the block. Just don't wallow in your own filth. It won't get you anywhere.
And then the last one, I always have to remind myself and others, all comparison leads to misery. Mm-hmm. Often what we're doing is comparing our lives to somebody else's lives. And when you compare your life to somebody else's life, that leads to misery, or compare anything, comparison. It's a human thing, but I think we all do it.
Well, you know, one of the cool things about, I don't know if I'd call it reality TV, but when they go behind the scenes of an athlete's life or a celebrity's life, and very quickly you see, well, what I'm looking at on the TV, that's not what's going on in that guy's head. You know, there's a lot more shit going on in that, and everyone has problems. Everyone has challenges. Everyone has stress and hardship. No one is immune to that. So when I begin to compare myself to somebody who's farther along than I am in a particular area, I always try to remind myself of that. And interestingly enough, going back to that last example, and I've told you this before, I told this woman in this thing, I think the other component of this is that, and I used to train my salespeople and recruiters on this, is when someone treats you with disrespect and you've given them no reason to do that, you need to stop the conversation immediately and say, excuse me, something to this effect. Excuse me, I need your help. I need to ask you, what have I done or said so that you now are treating me with this severe level of disrespect? I really would like to know, because I don't know what I've done, and I would like to learn. So tell me what I've done. And in my experience, Jim, 90% of people say, I'm sorry, because something else was going on in their life that had nothing to do with you, and you just got them at a bad time. And then I tell people the other 10% are just assholes, and it's good to know who the assholes are early, you know?
Yeah, there's plenty of them, no question. So, well, that's a good way to wrap it up, Mark. Until next week.
Sounds good, Jim.